Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I've got a video for you called Coronavirus and the Global Zeitgeist. It's a weird title, I know, but this has obviously been a topic that's been on my mind a lot lately, and I think it's been on your minds a lot as well. It's almost hard to avoid these days. Two parts, we're going to talk about the coronavirus itself with some actual real science facts, and why some of these facts can be so confusing, and why some of the numbers around it don't really seem to make sense. And then the next thing I want to talk about is the upcoming Zeitgeist for the entire planet, and Zeitgeist is a word that roughly means changing of the spirits or values of the time. And yes, I did watch the old conspiracy documentary back in high school. I don't believe in that, but it was fun to watch. And I think that this global pandemic is about to force a global economic and cultural and political change upon us that nobody is prepared for. I'm going to try to predict it. I'm going to make some guesses here. And basically, we're not going to be able to go back to the way things were before. There's no going back to, 2019. It's 2020 or bust moving forward. But for now, just enjoy the Warzone gameplay and some discussion about coronavirus and Zeitgeist, because I kind of have nothing else to do in quarantine. So, part one, true and confusing facts about the coronavirus. There are lots and lots of conspiracies out there floating around about the virus's origins, its lethality, specifically the lethality percentage, its links to 5G and Chinese biolabs, and a lot of stuff like that. So, as briefly as possible, there is almost a 99% chance that the virus originated from the joint Chinese-African biology research lab that's located in Wuhan. I watched a little documentary about this. It was sort of like something that, I forget, some university in China partnered with a couple of universities in Africa, and they had cross researchers, sharing professors back and forth. And specifically, some of them were studying coronavirus in bats, how it transmits among bats, and what could happen if it transmits to humans. Interestingly, several of the original research staff have kind of dropped off the face of the earth. The Chinese government says they're alive and well, but their information is being scrubbed and nobody's really seen them for a long time, so you can fill in the gaps there. And interestingly, this lab located in Wuhan is about 2 blocks away from the wet market where the virus was originally supposed to come from, and where people ate the bat soup. So instead of the disease being invented in a Chinese military biolab as a weapon to destroy America and Europe, it was probably just an accidental infection of one of the university researchers while they were handling a bat. And that researcher probably was asymptomatic. They went to the wet market in Wuhan and spread it around to everybody in a very urban, population-dense area. And thus, we have the Wuhan virus. And I think that it's best in this case to never attribute anything to malice when incompetence will suffice just as well, especially for governments. And we'll talk more about that in the Chinese government, probably near the end of this video. One of the big problems with this virus, at least in terms of the general public understanding it, is that the lethality is basically still unknown. We have some, and I would do air quotes, some data from countries in Europe and the United States that are overall more reliable than China or Russia or Brazil, but it's still incomplete data. The problem is that we can't test everybody for coronavirus. There's too many people out there wanting tests, too few tests. The tests are inaccurate. We're making them and improving them as fast as we can. There's a lot of testing restrictions right now. And it's also problematic that the majority of carriers of coronavirus are asymptomatic, and there are political pressures to not diagnose people with coronavirus to keep the numbers lower, or at least report it less. What is a science fact is about 70% of carriers show no symptoms whatsoever. Many never get sick, and they never get tested, and thus they are never counted as infected. If you added this group of people to the group of people, the total corona pool, just kind of extrapolated, you would see that the death rate for coronavirus is quite a bit lower than that, because you've just got more people that have no problems whatsoever. You're probably cutting the death rate down by 2/3. However, since testing is limited, only people who have all of the symptoms, and quite noticeably have all of the symptoms, are being tested. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard about people from almost every country in the world that had half of the symptoms of coronavirus, or most of them, or I'm pretty sure I have coronavirus, but it wasn't bad enough for the doctors to waste one of their very, very precious tests on. So you have a lot of people that probably do have corona and are symptomatic, but aren't being tested. If these people die later at home or in the hospital, if they still can't justify a test, if they're too far gone, then the deaths could be written off as a flu or pneumonia or something else for political reasons. I don't know how much we do this in the United States, but I know it can be quite bad in, say, Russia. Adding to this, you have really poor people in every single country that are just too poor to afford insurance or healthcare, or stuck in a bad mindset or bad environment. And they just get the virus, get sick, and die at home, and they just get written up as pneumonia or old age or something like that. And then we can just sprinkle in like a little topping on top of political pressure to be virus free. I saw this happening in China last month, where Wuhan had no new cases of coronavirus for like three or 4 days, but they were also refusing to test or treat people that might have had coronavirus because the government really wanted to say we had it under control and there were no new infections. Or you have stuff like in Brazil, where the president of Brazil is saying coronavirus isn't real, and like joining the like the reopening the economy protests. And it's a very urban, dense area. Very few people are getting tested. The infection rate's probably insane. Or in Russia, where we don't really know what's going on because the only information you get out is propaganda and weird Russian cell phone videos of like traffic backlogs outside of hospitals. And this whole giant group of undiagnosed and untracked and untested people means that our statistics are incomplete. That doesn't mean our statistics are useless and ignorable. We do get a very valuable insight into how coronavirus works from the statistics we do have. It's just not perfect. So when I look at this, what I see is that the reality of the situation is that the coronavirus is probably less deadly than being reported. The death percentage is probably lower than the official figures. I wouldn't say too much lower, but a little lower. However, I would wager very, very strongly that the total amount of people that are infected or have been infected and the total amount of deaths from coronavirus are way higher than what's being reported. I mean, we're talking, I would wager there are 3 or 4, maybe even 5 times more people that are infected with coronavirus than what we've seen reported, and death rates probably scale about 5 times as well. So yeah, that's kind of a lot to wrap your head around, a lot of unknowns. And at the end of the day, I don't want you to, take any bad information out of this, like it's not dangerous or it's not lethal or it's all a conspiracy. I'm just saying that the world's not perfect, and in an imperfect world with pressures of all kinds, especially political ones, you can get bad data. On this topic, I do not believe, and I don't think many of you do either, that coronavirus is being caused by 5G towers or hallway phones or the NWO or aliens or really any of that other kind of nonsense. That kind of conspiracy thinking is for Luddites, in my opinion. And conspiracies can be fun. I enjoy them. I probably know more about conspiracies than the majority of the audience here. I was big into it into a while, even without believing it. I just found it very intriguing. And I love double checking stuff without outright eliminating it. But some conspiracies are a lot weaker than others in the facts department. For example, you could compare the 5G coronavirus conspiracy links and the scientific accuracy of what they're proposing and the political motivations and the motivations of the parties involved compared to the very real conspiracy of J. Edgar Hoover perhaps having a role in the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. and James Earl Ray being kind of a stooge that they set up. If you go research that one, which I think if you do anything from this video, just go look up the MLK assassination theories. They are some of the most fantastic and well-researched ones in existence that I actually believe in versus 5G rays melt your skin. There's like a factual accuracy there. So at the end of all this, yes, the virus is real. Yes, it is worse than a flu, even if the death rate isn't super high, because we have no vaccine, no treatment for it, and we don't know how it affects all bodies yet. We're still kind of learning about this virus. So most doctors are kind of YOLOing it right now. And the big problem is that without social distancing, and by the way, I do think that social distancing is not just for old people. There are young people too that need to be social distanced because they can die, but they also spread it around. I saw a lady at one of the protest rallies, and she was saying, I have a strong immune system. I'm going to be fine. It's going to be okay. It's like, I don't even, I don't have to, I can come to this protest and be around all these people because I work from home and it's just me and my mom. And they're like, well, how old's your mom? She's like, she's 90. I'm like, so you're not worried that you're going to spread coronavirus to your 90-year-old mother? And she's like, well, what happens, happens. She's lived a long life. And that kind of thinking is very, very irresponsible. But the big problem with this is that it's so infectious. What could happen in a nightmare scenario is we get a whole ton of people infected all at once. And even if only 1% of those people need ventilators or hospital treatment, the hospitals, I mean, if you look at a hospital in an average city, it might have, 500, 1,000 beds in a city of a couple 100,000 people, because that's how many are sick, depending, I don't know, just kind of depends on your hospital and where you live. but no hospital that I'm aware of could treat 50, 60, 70, 100,000 people at once. It'd be a madhouse. You'd just be seeing people dying on the streets. So we're trying to slow down the transmission rates to avoid that kind of scenario where nobody can get medical treatment. All right, let's move on to part 2 before I go too far down the complaining. And I want to talk about the global Zeitgeist, which is a very funny word and a very odd thing to talk about, considering I've basically just made fun of conspiracy theorists. But the word it derives from 19th century German philosophy, and it means spirit of the age or spirit of the times, and refers to an invisible agent or force dominating the characteristics of a given epoch in world history. Essentially, this is the mindset of the era that you live in. The last two zeitgeists or epochs that we had were definitely the atomic age, the end of World War II and the birth of the atomic age, mutually assured destruction and advanced technology, living under the threat of instant incineration. That was a zeitgeist that defined the age. That's what that age was. Maybe the early internet age, where the internet really started connecting us 10, 15 years ago, something like that, could be considered a zeitgeist. But I think this one's bigger than everything except for maybe the atomic age, because we can't go back to the way life was before. Everything about our life, social, political, religious, economic, is about to change. And let's start just with technology. We've had the technology for in-store pickups and delivery for years now. Basically, as soon as we had smartphones, that technology was ready, capable. You could do it. You did do it. It was just a niche people didn't very often. And I think people just kind of didn't like it. I think they liked the personal touch of shopping. They like looking and holding physical objects. And more than that, they just got used to doing things a certain way and going out, and that's how it's supposed to be done. But now that we can't do that, now that we have no choice and we're forced to stay at home, we all have to adapt to delivery and pickup services and online services for almost everything. It probably should have been this way for a long time. This is a train that we probably should have got on a decade ago, because in many cases it's cheaper. You're going to get the lowest price goods. It's greener. You would think that shipping the goods to the house would actually be less green, because you'd have people, driving a car around. But the reality is, if you drive your car to the store and buy it and drive back, that burns a certain amount of gas, whereas the store can send one car to deliver to all people. And it's like one car making a long trip versus like a metric boatload of cars making a bunch of medium trips. And it's definitely greener to have the one car. Delivery is becoming faster and faster too. Amazon Prime, at least in my city, can do same day delivery, Postmates, Uber Eats, all that stuff. I can get food almost 24/7 anytime I want it. And my genuine belief on this is, now that a lot of people are forced to use this new system, it's like a hard upgrade for life. If your phone, it's like if your life was a cell phone and it just pushes through one of those Apple updates and you just have to take it no matter what. That's kind of what it's like. But I think that once they're forced to try it, people are going to enjoy this more and more over time. I do believe that when stores reopen, there will be a big rush of foot traffic initially of people that really want the feeling of a physical store and enjoy the novelty of going out and are tired of being in quarantine. But over time, I think it's going to trail off, and I think you're going to see half or more of the people kind of stick with the delivery services because going shopping is going to be unnecessary for them. In my case, since I don't eat very much food, I'm on like a super restricted diet, down 30 pounds? No, 29 pounds today. I don't really need to go out and shop a whole lot. I get like a food box once a week and I'm pretty much good to go. The other big driving force is work at home. Some workers have had this luxury for a few years now, maybe 5, maybe 10 if you're really, really lucky. Contractors, gamers, musicians, whatever, a few IT people. But the vast majority of workers for the vast majority of jobs are still required to come into an office. However, right now, since literally everyone, at least white collar, has to work from home, I know that, medical essential workers and food essential and a lot of people that have been deemed essential workers are out there on the front lines working and risking their life for a lot less pay than the white collar people are making at home. That kind of sucks. But one thing we are learning right now is what kind of jobs can and can't be done at home and what the minimum number of people is to get a job done. And what I would wager on is that most companies have a lot of jobs that can be work from home. And I think that they're going to keep it that way because doing so saves them overhead. They'll need smaller offices, smaller buildings, smaller headquarters. And they can probably pay their employees less because working at home is considered a benefit. The employees are going to be overall happier in most cases. And since you're not an employee that has clock in and out times, they could probably reclassify more people as contractors and save on benefits and payroll and taxes and a lot of stuff, insurance primarily. So that's not a good thing, but I think that's a thing that's coming. And in an interconnected world, being in a physical office is just no longer a requirement for a lot of jobs. And what this is going to do is all of these different factors are going to work together, and it's going to create a major work-life balance change for almost everyone all over the world. I think that, yes, there's going to be some jobs that are still in person, essential, a lot of them actually. But I think that companies are going to offload every single job that they possibly can to work at home, and that's going to change up how people just view employment in general. The bigger picture in all of this is the social, political, and environmental problems or changes that are coming at the end of coronavirus. Speaking socially, I think you're going to see a major rift between quarantiners and a group that I'm going to call anti-vaxxers or non-believers in the virus. The anti-vax and the quarantine protest crowds are quite big right now, at least in the United States and other countries too. They're loud, they're angry, and I can strongly empathize with how these people feel. I don't agree with their actions, but I have the same feelings they do. I don't like being forced into my home. I don't like being forced into isolation. It feels like it should be wrong and immoral. It feels like I should have the freedom to do whatever I want to do in America because America's freedom. I don't like losing money on my bit. I mean, YouTube ad rates and Twitter ad rates are garbage right now. My money is down. That's why you see so many like advertisements and plugs on this channel, because I got to, stay afloat here. But conversely, I do know that quarantine and stay-at-home orders are legal as per Supreme Court rulings based on public health concerns from other disasters and other times of needs, and they're necessary for the survival of many people in the United States. As a matter of fact, I read an article recently that the FBI put out a report 1, maybe 2 years ago saying that they considered the anti-vax movement in the US to be a major concern because if there was a major health crisis, that the amount of damage done by anti-vaxxers, conspiracy people, and protesters would be worse than an actual terror attack. And I think that's kind of turning out to be true. So basically, the idea the FBI was proposing is if an anti-vaxxer convinces a couple other people not to vax, then they could all die. And it kind of spreads and it creates a bigger movement and they all infect each other. And that all of these actions do lead to deaths and infections and human sickness and suffering. And that it could be worse than just, say, a suicide bombing kind of attack. And what this kind of, I guess the rift has always been there, it's just really exposing it. But this is a really big psychographic rift in the United States that's also political in nature. This, by psychographic, that's, demographics is like black, white, male, female, American, South American, like those kind of old, young, those kind of statistics. Psychographic is statistics for your mind. People that are angry, people that are smart, people that are dumb, people that like cheese and don't, people that have a certain personal value. And that's what you're seeing going on with coronavirus. It's exposing different psychographics and people that have different risk evaluation methods, different education levels, different personal values for just what you value more. Honestly, money, lives, personal freedom. There's different outrage types being exposed, different patience levels, different information gathering sources, conspiracy proneness, and even religious beliefs, like the pastor who keeps getting arrested for having big services in his megachurch where he begs for money and then gets arrested and uses the money to bail himself out down there in Florida. Hope he gets hit by a car. And in our polarized world, I think that this is going to cause a big rift in society in the coming months, and that we'll say the quarantiners, the people that really believe in all this, the little goody two-shoes that sit at home, and the people that are very vehemently against this are going to clash in some kind of capacity, and I have no idea what's going to happen. Environmentally speaking, this is even bigger picture than our social problems. Our planet is doing a shockingly good job at recovering from decades of environmental damage. We have the cleanest air that we've had since like World War II in the majority of countries. The coolest weather, that's Texas. I know locally it's been really cool in Texas, but global warming has taken just a slight slowdown since we're polluting so much less. And the best wildlife recovery in my lifetime. The wildlife recovery is just off the charts right now. Biodiversity is up. Endangered species are breeding and doing well. You can see stars in big cities. Hey, you can go to LA and there's no smog some days. That's crazy. People are noticing this and they do value it. I don't think that this kind of change is going to spur a whole lot of beliefs about global warming, or you're not going to convert people to hippies and get them all on board with carbon taxes and all that, but it's kind of definitely a wake-up call, mostly for urban people, about the life that they've been missing, about how far away they are from nature, or how nice the environment can be for them, what the environment can do for them when it's taken care of. As a second part to this, I believe that coronavirus is also a wake-up call for those out there who even vaguely believe in the Gaia theory. And the Gaia theory is kind of like the Earth is alive, the Earth is a cell, we're all interconnected, or there's a guiding hand, maybe. And when we humans mess up too much, or any species for that matter, and put the planet in danger, that the planet will just kill us all and go back to business as usual. Usually this is explained as a natural systems kind of thing, like if we globally warm the planet to be inhospitable and all the humans die, well, something will live and they'll just take over, and that'll be the way the planet kills us off, or a virus or a disease. And I think there's a lot of people that believe this. As a matter of fact, I argue with we'll say anti-global warming people. I'm big on climate change. I think that's a very real thing, and I argue with people about it a lot more than I should on Twitter. And one of the more common phrases I hear is like, well, when the planet's done with us, or when global warming doesn't need to be people, it'll just kill us all and the planet will go back to business as usual. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably true. The planet will probably kill all of us and there'll still be life here, but I would rather not have that first part happen. The point of this is that coronavirus is much weaker as a virus than what we could have gotten. This is like a shot across the bow. This is like a wake-up call, a slap to the face to anybody who thinks that we can endlessly take from the environment with no consequences. A lot of people are going to start realizing there has to be some kind of care and consideration and conservation for my environment, or the next germ that we discover is going to be much, much worse. And even the most awful, greediest, corporatist, pollutinous people that you can imagine, the Captain Planet villains, value their money, and they don't value viruses disrupting their money. So I think they're going to care too. And finally, at the end of the video, the most controversial topic here, I have no idea what's going to become of the world politically, because basically this is almost like a test to see what China can get away with. And we're going to talk about Chinese government and the CCP. The CCP, or the Chinese Communist Party, unintentionally bungled the handling of the coronavirus very early on and caused it to spread globally. Instead of treating it and warning people and taking it seriously, they covered it up, put out misleading info, reassured world leaders it was fine, and then, once they got blamed for everything, they was like, okay, we'll supply medical equipment, but like the medical equipment they supplied had like a 70 or 75% failure rate, which is almost worse than having nothing. And right now in China, the government propaganda machines, and even just the population that doesn't want to believe it came from China, is blaming it on Africans, African immigrants, or Americans. It's a big American conspiracy to turn the world against China. I guess it's a bad time to be African American living in China. But the problem with this is that other countries will want to make China take responsibility for these actions and pay for the damage that they have done. If they did it intentionally, if they did it accidentally, if maybe they didn't do it and it just looks like they did, the world is going to want China to pay for it. And Chinese culture is all about saving face. If you get bored, you can look up like the Chinese saving face culture. You avoid embarrassment. And that's a big, big part of Asian culture, Chinese in particular, and the Chinese Communist Party are even more so about saving face while projecting strength. So they fear that the system that they created, which runs their country, might crumble if they accept responsibility, or in any kind, even like if they have to do an apology, or they have to accept responsibility or take a sanction or pay a fine for this mistake, they have lost face. They have been embarrassed. They have been besmirched. They have been thrown down in public. And they don't want to do that. So the Chinese government is going to play hardball with the entire world on this issue. And when everybody gets pissed off and there's trade restrictions and sanctions and embargoes and information and crucial supplies and trading, China's going to play hard with everything. They're going to trade how they want to. They're going to ignore every sanction. People are going to be afraid to sanction them. They're not going to obey embargoes. They're going to put out their own information. They're going to make and control whatever essential supplies they can. And it's going to be rough, because then it comes down to other governments, primarily Western ones, of what is it worth to try and punish the second most powerful country in the world, especially one that is soon to become the most powerful country in the world? And a better question is, can we even do it? Can China, similar to how Russia does, be punished because they have nukes and tanks and an army and a globally connected economy that damages the world? If we wanted to give China a little spanking, maybe not even militarily, but with sanctions, they could just say, no, we have nukes. What are you going to do about it? And I think in the future, this is going to get quite ugly, and I have no idea what's going to happen, but it won't be boring, I don't think. That's the most optimistic word I can give it. Guys, that is all for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time for something more